players as close to full match fitness as we possibly can. We've had such a short period of time that was now impossible, but we feel we've got the squad in a good place. Obviously, we've been hit by a few positive tests from the results, which haven't certainly helped, and any players or staff members have had to miss the environment for 11 days. So a few question marks. We've got another test tomorrow, and that's the one I'm most nervous about, because if we lose any players from tomorrow, they'll certainly be out of the whole playoff campaign, and all that hard work they've done previously will almost go to waste. So fingers crossed over the next couple of days, and also fingers crossed we don't pick up any unneeded injuries.
I mean, and for you, just how scary is it, the fact that, players can have this and have no symptoms and be carrying around, and it's just really hard to probably keep track of, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important to say that the 3 positive results we've had, those 3 people had no symptoms whatsoever, and we're really lucky to a certain extent that they've not passed, or as far as we know, they've not passed it on to anyone within their family and within their houses, and they remain symptom-free and have all returned to the training ground environment. So certainly strange, because it's probably even more frightening that people can have it and have shown no symptoms whatsoever, which is why it's so easily passed on. We're asking all our players and all our staff who are working together to remain as vigilant as they possibly can and try and avoid any contact or unneeded contact. But we will be travelling to Colchester together. Obviously, that's a long old journey, fraught with some bits and pieces we can't control, certainly like service stations and even when we have a pre-match food at hotels. But it's needs must. And all this external influence, which we can't control, just means we've got to really control what happens on the pitch, and hopefully we can put in a performance.
I mean, what's that testing process like? I mean, I spoke to Jason Stockley recently, and he's described it as the worst thing he's ever experienced. I mean, he might be a bit soft, but I mean, is it bad?
It's not nice. I think you're on a call with me today, and it is not nice. So it probably depends who does it. If you get a doctor who's a little bit rougher than maybe the club physio or a nurse, that swab goes a long way down your throat and a long way up your nose. So it's very unpleasant, so to speak. But like I said, we understand why we're doing it. We've been pleased with what we've had back so far. We can't control the results. All we can do is make the players and the staff feel comfortable, make them feel that we've provided a safe environment, and hopefully that remains a positive test-free environment for the next sort of 10 days.
Absolutely. And just looking back a bit on your playing career, you had a pretty successful career, represented Exeter at Wembley, and obviously got the club promoted for the playoffs. I mean, do you think having that experience is going to help in the long run and in the short term?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I think that there's a group of players within our squad who've encountered the playoffs before. We seem to have fantastic moments in the semi-finals and then struggle to get over the final hurdle. They've just got to concentrate on what's right in front of them, and that is to start with is a very difficult away leg at Colchester. They'll be all guns blazing and expected to come out with a fast start, and being a home team and being a good team at home as well. So we've got to be right on it from the word go, and the players can't look too far ahead of them. When you talk about previous experiences, I mean, it's going to be totally different. It's going to be a totally different feel, a totally different atmosphere, and totally different preparation. And we've always gone into a playoff campaign on the back of a grueling season, which is finished either on highs or low. And now we're going on the back of it relatively fresh in our minds, but probably not as prepared as we'd like to be in terms of our physical position on the back of missing 12 to 13 weeks of football.
It's quite a unique situation that no team's come into this in form. You're kind of starting again. Does that make it difficult to even, to see what threat that Colchester could pose?
We've got an idea of what their threat is. A lot will depend on personnel. I think I've said in various interviews today the importance of the bench and the fact that 5 subs can be used. Almost, half of your outfield team is incredible in a squad of 20 players. So I expect a fast start, but I also expect the game to slow down at some stage. And when it does, we need to have some control in our ball players to be able to utilise that ball. So the bench will have a really big impact. And also second leg, we might have to change personnel. I spoke about that time frame the players haven't played any games for, and to ask them to play 2 games in 4 days and 2 high-pressured games in 4 days is absolutely incredible. So we've got to assess that, but we can only take care of what's directly in front of us at the moment. And I've got to pick my best 11, an 11 which I feel are fit enough to compete to start with and to play well and to perform well. And hopefully we get a foothold in the game and carry that forward.
And it's said a lot that, with the fans there, it can really drive a team on, especially those last 20 minutes. Is it going to be a bit of a challenge to adapt to the fact that, there is no background noise?
Yeah, definitely. And the players, it'll be down to the players to drive each other on. If we're having a difficult time, they've got to sort themselves out. The coaches will encourage them as best we possibly can, and you'll probably hear a lot of voices which you can't usually hear. But it's down to the players that they're out there on the pitch, they're out there in the heat of battle. They've got to be sensible in terms of how they conduct themselves, but use their energy to influence each other in a positive manner. It certainly won't be easy, and it will be strange where there's no home fans. Does that give us a bit of an advantage psychologically going to Colchester? I'm not so sure. All I know is that Colchester traditionally have been a strong team at home, and we've been a strong team at home as well. The players love playing at the park, so that might be even more strange for the second leg than actually the first leg. But if we can carry on our good home form, then it'll give us a chance.
I mean, just looking back on your career as well, I believe you had a pretty short stint at Colchester. Did you enjoy that time? It was only about a month or so, wasn't it?
Yeah, I went there for a month. I really enjoyed it. I played 5 games, and it was when that club was in a bit of a transition. A lot of young players, but I really did enjoy it. It was a good club. Actually, reminds me a little bit of Exeter, the way it's run. Really big focus on their academy. Certainly, not a huge club by any means at this level, but one of who sort of yo-yoed between League Two and League One. I think they had a season in the Championship not too long ago as well. So I did actually really enjoy my time there. The only downside is it's a long way from anywhere, but the same could be said for Exeter to a certain extent. But like I say, I would have enjoyed going back there if I had the chance.
Just touching on the fans again as well, you know, a lot of them have donated their hard-earned cash from season tickets and donating match tickets. I mean, and buying these cardboard cutouts and things. As a manager, it must be so lovely to see that, you know, the fans, you know, got the clubs back in these times.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I say it time and time again, they are the club, and they own the club, and they're the future of this football club. And anything they can do to help us out, obviously we know what's going to happen in terms of the financial restraints after the pandemic or in the middle of the pandemic. And anything the fans can do will be greatly appreciated. The big thing is we understand their support. We understand that we feel like we understand their connection towards the club. The players feel they've got a real connection with the fans. Any player you speak about the unique nature of Exeter City Football Club, and that is down to the fans. So we're eternally grateful in terms of that. And any of those cardboard cutouts in terms of familiar faces where we see either at Colchester or back at the park, it'd be great to see them. It's such a shame they can't be there with us because they've been with us for every step of this journey. But hopefully it can have a positive end, and we are still looking forward to at some stage in the future playing in front of our fans again. Hopefully that's sooner rather than later. But the nature of the virus will dictate that.
Absolutely. And then finally from me on this, you know, with the way the season ended, you have to look at this as a fantastic opportunity to turn it into a really successful season.
Definitely, but we can't hide the fact we were disappointed when the season finished. We felt we'd given ourselves a fantastic opportunity of automatic promotion, something we've been striving for all season. So to that be taken away from us was deeply disappointing. But you've got to quickly move on in life and especially in sport. And then look at what's next, and the focus quickly turned to the playoff campaign. And you just touched upon it there. It's a fantastic opportunity. I really want these players to savour it. It will be gone in a flash. It'll be over pretty quickly. But I want them to play well. I want them to be a really good reflection on what they are as good characters and good players. And hopefully they'll conduct themselves in the right way and be a good reflection on the club.
Before we let you go to carry on your preparations, we've just got a few questions that have been sent in. If you have
no problem.
I mean, the first one, just how much have you missed football, you know, these past couple of months?
Oh, well, missed it a lot. You know, we missed the connection you get every day with the players and the staff, and we've got a really good, positive environment at the training ground. So we missed that, but it was apparent pretty early how serious this was, and it was such a strange experience managing a football team with no football games. So a lot of communication, a lot of ports of call in terms of the players and the staff, and the well-being and the mental well-being as well as the physical well-being is something we probably don't discuss enough or don't cover enough. So making sure everyone was safe first and foremost, everyone was comfortable in terms of what was next, in terms of an understanding of what our plan was if we were to return to the training grounds. But it also reiterated the fact that we've got a good set of people working at the club. Staff and players, they're all employees of this football club, and they really conduct themselves in the right way. I think people have seen in the press about the way players have phoned fans and the good nature getting around in terms of, you know, just kind words. And a lot of people were in positions where they were lonely, self-isolating on their own and in a difficult position. So we tried to do as much as we possibly could. and try to spread a little bit of positivity in what was a difficult time. I fully understand we're certainly not through the worst of it as yet, but there's brighter signs on the horizon, and hopefully we can give everyone something else to cheer about in the next couple of weeks.
How have you had to adapt your style of coaching due to the pandemic, if at all?
Well, it was certainly strange to start with. In terms of the small groups and the individual work, coaching is totally different. It means you can actually coach the players a little bit more, but to start with, we had to concentrate on their physical attributes, and fitness was the main protocol. So we really did slog them to death for the first 10 days, really worked them hard, but hopefully we'll see the benefits in the next couple of weeks. And then it was strange trying to plan possession and small-sided games, drills, when you've got a social distance. And you can never quite replicate the intensity of a match environment. But as soon as we got the green light to start contact training, and then training was a lot more straightforward. I must admit, it's certainly strange when you see your team going up against each other in training, and then the moment training finishes, you've got to remind them to social distance again, and stick to those government guidelines. So, like I said earlier on, you do adapt, and this seems to be the new norm. We've got a marquee out the front of the training ground. Justin was brilliant in terms of helping provide that. And the players have seemed to enjoy something different at the training ground. They've had no access to the buildings. There's been no gym programs, unfortunately. But as the guidelines and the general rules are starting to loosen, normality is going to start to resume again. When we get back to training for next season remains to be seen. But hopefully it'll be more like what it used to be when we do.
Next question is, where does Exeter's budget rank compared to other teams in League Two this season, would you say?
Well, it's difficult to know because I don't personally know the rest of the league's budget. I'd say we're probably mid-range, if I'm being totally honest. There's some spenders in our league which we all know about, and some big spenders. And then there's some teams who work with a really small budget. So one thing I do know is that we work within our means. Our budget is being competitive due to the fact that we've sold players in recent seasons, even before my time. And the stability that the trust has provided within our football club. So I always feel that as a club we've generally overachieved if we get to the playoffs and close to the automatic promotion places. But we've got a good squad of players at the moment, and we've got good stability over a number of seasons now. So it almost feels like the club, it's certainly not a detriment to it, but we shouldn't take the playoffs for granted. That is a huge achievement for a club like Exeter, and the fact that we've been in the playoffs throughout the last 4 seasons suggests we're doing something right. But we want to get over that final hurdle. But like I've always said, we've got to take care of what's in front of us first and foremost, and that's Colchester.
You mentioned having a pretty decent squad. I mean, that goes on to the next question here. I mean, what positions do you think you look to strengthen heading into next season? I mean, I'm guessing it all comes down to finances and that as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course it does. Most managers would tell you they want to strengthen every single position and keep improving. But we've got to be realistic in what we can and can't do at XSC. And we've had relative success this season, so it doesn't need too much. Look, in terms of budgets for next season, that's to be assessed, and we'll get a better idea when fans can come back into our stadium and future cash flows for the football club. So in terms of positions, I think we've had quite a balanced squad this season, and we've not really been short in too many areas. We're always looking to improve, and recruitment is something which we've prided ourselves on for a number of seasons now. If we had another strong recruitment drive, despite what that looks like, we will improve as a squad. One thing is for sure, I think the news broke today that 3 contracts have been offered out to our under-18s. Now, they're not first team ready, but they'll certainly have a future within the Exeter City pathway. And everyone saw the strides the under-23s made this season, not only in the under-23 competition, but also the first team games they featured in terms of the leasing trophy. So in terms of those academy products getting more game time, I think that's more realistic in the future.
Just carrying on in terms of contracts here as well. I mean, how have you managed to keep the squad together? You know, as you mentioned, there are a few players who are out of contract come the end of the month. I mean, how do you keep morale going with those guys?
I can't speak highly enough of those players. They're in the most difficult situation, and they're the ones where my focus and attention has been more than anyone else. There was 8 players out of contract. Now, 2 of those players have not come back to our training environment. They didn't feel it was safe or right for them to do so. We totally accept and understand that. The remaining 6 have been outstanding. They really have. The character they've shown to come back into the training environment with the uncertainty they've got about their futures is testament to themselves. I'm testament to the club because they want to finish well. But also they'll be playing for the futures, whether that's with ourselves or elsewhere. These are showcase games. They'll be watched by hopefully millions. I'm not sure what the figures will be, but hopefully a lot of people. And I'm sure a lot of managers in lower league football will be taking note. It remains to be seen whether we can offer contracts out at the end of this season or going into next season. But it must be said how proud I am of that group of players. And when you put that group of 8 players plus Jayden Richardson in terms of a lone player, there's potential for a big shift at the end of the season in terms of players we're losing. If we can't replace them, that remains to be seen as yet. But we're certainly looking forward to these playoffs and these players. It shows their motivation. It shows that they've fought long and hard this season. It shows they still have something to play for.
Absolutely. I'll describe this next question as interesting. It says, under Portisdale, we defended with all back at corners. I hope with your appointment this would have changed. We often concede from set pieces, so see this negative when at home, especially with pacey wingers. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I've been asked time and time again. It keeps coming up, this question. I took over a certain structure in terms of defending set pieces, and one which worked and one which actually has continued to work. I'm not a stat man. I'm a little bit more old-fashioned, but statistically, we're quite a good team defending set pieces, and it suits our personnel. There was a reason why Paul and his coaching staff at the time went to that system and that structure, and because it suited a lot of the personnel involved. So the players are comfortable with it. I assess it at the end of every season because it'd be wrong to change in the middle of the season. And we are looking at ways to improve it and get more attacking players up the pitch. But first things first is defending the set piece, and you certainly can't do that on the halfway line. So something we're continuing to assess, and it will depend a lot on the squad and the makeup and the DNA of the squad we've got next season, whether or not we change it.
One final question here. Do you believe the players will be fully fit and match ready for the first game, or would you have preferred more time?
Look, I think it's unrealistic to say they'll be match fit. And when I say match fit, in the season match fit. So they're probably 2 weeks behind where they need to be on the back of a normal pre-season. And in the normal pre-season, you have a best part of 6 to 8 practice games where you can build up your minutes from half a game all the way through to 90 minutes. Now, obviously, we've not had the time to be able to do that, but Colchester will be in the same boat. All the other playoff teams will be in the same situation. So, like I've touched upon, I think it will be a high-intensity game for a certain period of time, whether that's half a game or an hour a game. But certainly due to fatigue levels and preparation time, I do expect the game to slow down. Similar to what I mentioned earlier, that means there's more importance on the bench and some players to make an impact from the bench and be able to give you an element of control as a manager. So crash bang wallop to start with, and a lot of running around and a lot of energy. But how much we give out in the first half has to be reflected in how well we play in the second half.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time, Matt. I'm sure you've got plenty to be getting on with, so we'll leave it at that.
Brilliant.
Head off. Okay, so I think it's time for another poll now, Nick, according to my notes.
Time for another one. So I'll just end this one then, and you can have a look at the results before I do.
And we got a lot of people over 10 years, or N years, as that says.
Yeah, that's
brilliant. So next guest is Julian Tagg. I'll let you start off, Julian, by explaining the changes to your role and title to Club President and Director of External Affairs.
Well, I suppose the starting place is it's obviously, it's a privilege to have any position. So, no matter what the name is, you're only really part of a team, you're part of a group of people on the field, off the field, from the trust model down. So I think the idea was that we discussed was, we have Nick, who's the trust chairman. Richard is coming in as to chair the board, so he becomes the board chairman. And David Lee had done a great job before, so it was a good idea that carry on. And I thought there was probably too many chairmen around the place. So at that point, we gave it some thought, and certainly the president name wasn't my suggestion. I was thinking more in terms of vice chairman, but I think I ended up with a different title. I think they reflect, and I'll speak a little bit about the reason for the external affairs part of it. They reflect a little bit more of our standing in the community. But I've got the titles, but I haven't relinquished any of the other jobs. I think I was outmaneuvered by Nick on that one pretty seriously. So. But that's the way it's ended up. And again, as I say, I haven't lost any responsibilities as such. I think from the external point of view, I think Director of External Affairs, for the moment, apart from a number of other things, I get to sit on the Liverpool Exeter board. That's the strategy for Exeter and Greater Exeter, and it's important that we're a part of that. And also from that, during this period, I've been asked to sit also on the Exeter Place Board, which is really just about COVID. That's chaired by Steve Smith and has John Hart from the County Council, Sean Sawyer of Devon and Cornwall Police, the CEO of the RD&E. So to put us in that kind of company, and for us to be asked to be in that kind of company, just shows the credibility from where the club has come from, and the kudos it's held with, and that we are a serious partner across the board, which is exactly how it should be. So those are some things that have been worked on, and that and we've made good ground in. And you know, you need to be in those places ready, not only to assist. We're a community club. Lots of people talk about it and so on, but we are. I think people will know that not only for two reasons, really. One, the work that the City Community Trust has done, but also because of our trust model. That's really what the City Council and the County Council understand. I think they're delighted with what's happened, and they see us as not necessarily a player as such, but somebody that's got an awful lot to offer the area. So in the change of title, it was really to reflect the significance and the importance and the credibility of the club, and also to give me, if you like, a direct responsibility to carry that on, because it is time consuming. It doesn't happen on its own. And also from an external point of view, there's the view from the EFL, and during this period of time, as voted by the League Two, I sit on the commercial committee, so I get to see what's happening a little bit earlier on the commercial side. But also I'm a replacement for the person who is the rep for League Two. And the way it works at the moment with the EFL board, there's 3 championship reps, there's 2 League One, and there's 1 League Two. And of course, in circumstances like this, you know, that's far too much work for one person. I have to say they've done a phenomenal amount of work and time and effort's gone into it. So during this period, I've been tasked with looking after 12 clubs, and John's looked after the other 12. So again, it's Exeter City being recognised as, you know, as part of the football community, and it's useful to be able to understand what's going on, to read what's happening perhaps a little bit in advance, and see what's coming and what's not. And I think that's particularly helpful for the football club. You know, for a trust-owned club like ours, I think people are very, very interested and very supportive of a model that is very different. So those are really the reasons behind those changes. Although, as I say, I'm still doing my day job with the academy, and I'm working with Matt in the first team.
You touched on it briefly there, but there's been a huge amount of activity in the local community from the club and mainly CCT. I mean, how proud are you of that, and just the response to what's happened?
Yeah, well, in that Exeter Place board, which is primarily and only just about COVID, one of the things I do is I report on what has happened, and of course the City Council have a well-being organisation which receive all the calls and so on. But somebody has to, as I've always said, somebody has to do the hard yards. Somebody has to get their hands dirty. And Jamie and his crew there, and an awful lot of other volunteers I should have done a quite phenomenal job. So when you say about proud, and we're all proud of everything that's achieved, of course, but when you sit in front of those people and you can tell them what Jamie has been doing, you know, deliveries, not only of food deliveries, of medicine and prescriptions, and then also the picking up of the food that gets sent out directly to some of the people that don't want it, that gets redistributed. They have done a phenomenal amount. So amongst a whole load of other things as well, education initiatives, and there's a number of things, and they're having to adapt very, very quickly, which I think is one of our strengths. So to be able to sit there and report on, you know, that work to the sort of people that, you know, as I say, you know, that's a who's who in many respects is very important. And from that, there's another group now that I've been asked to sit on, which is the Exeter Visiting Recovery Group. It's chaired by Charlie Courtney and of course AJ, who are now our patrons, and they're leading on trying to recover some of the visitors to our area, and of course we're part of that. And again, it was something that we were asked to do because they see us as an important part of that. So I think you hit the nail on the head then. That's sort of my proudest moment to report. You go through 30 odd people report, from Stagecoach to Matt out at the airport, through to the railways. Everybody is reporting as to what's happening, and we're reporting. Many of those are macro, and in a way you could say ours is micro, but for Steve Smith to say we'd like a summary of what you're doing and we'd like you to summarize each week is very important for our club.
I think just finally from me, it's obviously going to be a long journey, isn't it? But how well do you think the club has responded to all these challenges that coronavirus has, put out there? And do you think, we're on the right path?
I think the way that we've gone about it has been probably the most important thing. Where everybody has a different circumstance, and of course we have a huge amount of changing circumstances at the other end. And you take those two positions of the individual and what's happening nationally and try and find a solution to that. Very, very difficult. But I think the way we've approached it very often has been from a point of view of saying, this is what we're doing. And certainly the way the club and the trust approach, for instance, the season tickets and that kind of thing. Certainly the way we approached the players, we said, could they defer payments? But it was completely voluntary, because you have some with 4 children who are building a house and some that, just live on their own with a significant amount of for want of a better word, spare money that they don't need right now that can be deferred. So by asking them to do it that way, the response has been beyond what we would have expected pretty much everywhere. So yeah, the word proud is overused, but I think we've approached it as well as we could under the circumstances, and the response we've got has been outstanding across the board.
Thank you, Julian. I think we'll just get an update from Nick and Justin, and then we'll do a quick Q&A of everyone as well. Nick, I think there's time for another poll before you get going. I don't know if you can multitask here.
I'll turn my mute off. I'll end the one we're doing, which
Okay.
was about the Golden Go. So
yeah,
you can see the results there.
Randell against Plymouth. Yeah.
Who'd have thought, eh?
Circumstance was more important, I think.
Yeah.
I think there's another poll for you to run then, Nick.
Okay, just bear with me.
And then we'll have a quick catch up.
Favourite of favourites.
Oh, there we go. So Nick, just how delighted have you been, and the Supporters Trust been, with the response of the supporters to the current situation?
It's been stunning, to be honest, and I think way beyond what we expected. Certainly, given that we haven't pushed it particularly hard, and a lot of the things that we've been doing have been. I'd love to say that we sat around a table and tried to work out ways to raise money, but quite often supporters were writing to us saying, "Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?" Before we started this forum, I got a quick update. So just in terms of cash donations from trust members, that totals 2,800. Season tickets where people have said they won't take a refund, that's totaling 33,000. Advance tickets, so the tickets bought for Salford and such games, that's another 3,500, and almost 4,000 pounds worth of Plymouth Argyle away tickets. But to date, the total is just over 43,000 pounds, which is
incredible,
absolutely phenomenal. And I think it touches on a little bit around what Julian was saying about, because everybody thinks they're a community club. I'm sure if you go to any club in the country, they'll say they're a community club. But there's something about how we do community that really makes people feel that they belong to something special, that it's beyond a football club, I think. And for people to, particularly in these really difficult times, for people to give up their hard-earned cash to help is absolutely phenomenal. And the FSA have actually been in touch asking us how we do it, and we've kind of said, well, we've just got great supporters. What can we say? That's the truth of it. But it's £43,000, phenomenal.
That's brilliant. How well would you say the club has responded and reacted to these challenges as well? And what are the challenges we should be, looking out for going forward?
So clearly, I think the next season and probably the season after that is going to be a challenge in terms of finances. You can't play without a crowd in front of you and not expect that. And of course, people have come back off furlough now, so a lot of the government aid we were getting is going to start slipping away now. But I think the response from, and Julian was talking about the players, and I should probably talk about the staff a little bit as well, because it's been phenomenal. The stuff that you've been doing, and Simon's been doing stuff, or the social media. And I said I think it was at another forum we had a few weeks ago, that it's amazing when you see the donations coming in, and you see that it's actually employees donating money to the company they work for. I mean, how incredible is that? So I think the club have done brilliantly. They've upheld the ethos of the club and of trust ownership, and every supporter and everybody involved in the club should feel really, really proud of that, because it's special, and I think it's unique to Exeter.
Absolutely. I think one other way the trust have improved quite a lot in the past, few months is in communications with supporters as well. Is that something that you, as chairman, has been trying to push forward? I think there's quite a few things, planned to come up as well, isn't there, in the future in terms of the way you communicate in that?
Yeah. So we've always, if there's ever been a criticism of the trust, it's that we haven't communicated enough, and it can be quite difficult, because you're trying to balance your comms with what the club's doing. So you don't want to flood everything and be saying everything twice. So the club say something and then the trust repeat it. So we've been trying to find areas where we can communicate things that are unique to the trust, or that are of particular interest to trustees. And I have to say, we were talking earlier that the words technology and trust wouldn't normally fit into one sentence, but people really have taken to Zoom. We've got Will on our comms group is actually been testing a means of electronic voting for our trustee election. So hopefully that we'll be doing that electronically this year. We're getting newsletters out regularly. So we are pushing comms, and we're getting better at it. I think that's for sure. That's how it feels at any rate.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nick. Thanks for your update.
Pleasure.
We'll move to Justin. We'll just could you just start by maybe giving us an update on the state of play at St James Park?
Yeah, sure, Scott. So we've started getting people back in, preparing for the game. We're bringing people off of furlough. The job retention scheme's been a massive help to the club in terms of its finances, but now's the time to actually bring people back and focus on getting ready for next week's game. So a lot of paperwork. Never anticipated that actually crowds in the stadium I thought were hard work. Plymouth Argyle fixture always leaves me a little bit exhausted and stressed after that many people in the stadium, but actually the empty stadium things really challenged us, and I think challenged football clubs as a whole. So the EFL sending us bundles of literature, but we're having to digest that and understand what the impact is of having a COVID safe stadium. So protecting those players, keeping people away from the stadium so the players can actually stay safe, enjoy the game, be proud of our club on the day. So we're submitting operational plans for next week. We've got a safety advisory group meeting tomorrow, where hopefully they'll sign off our safety certificate, which is part of the process we have to go through here. And then the EFL sign it all off, and then we get to deliver one game. It must be tough on the championship clubs. I know they've got a lot more resource, but to do this every week and clean down your stadium, we got one fixture. We need to focus all our efforts on supporting Matt. So that's what this next week is all about. Goal Line Technology has been in over the weekend, so we've been working with them. And then we expect Sky to turn up in next 2 to 3 days, start installing cameras everywhere. So yeah, it's all sort of like very strange to go from a very quiet St James's Park, where I've been in there a number of times on my own, to now suddenly staff back, contractors back, making sure that we work COVID safe, socially distanced, all those kind of things, and get plans for a big match day that's live on TV.
mentioned it a couple of times tonight, and it still seems weird to say it, but we just got to encourage people to, as much as you want to, just enjoy it from home, and don't come to St James Road or anything.
Yeah, like we'll have, the police will be on site for the fixture. It's really important to us to have that proud moment, and also to allow everyone to focus on keeping the game flowing nicely whilst it's on TV. The last thing we need is distractions, and I'm sure everything that's gone on by the fans so far would suggest that they'll support us in this as well.
Absolutely. I mean, what are those challenges, would you say, to hosting a game behind closed doors, in terms of the use of the facilities by both teams and things like that?
Yeah, one of the strange things, is that a player can stand next to each other in a wall or mark a man as tight as they like at a corner, because that's on the pitch and contact is allowed in play, obviously. But then when it comes to changing rooms, we need to socially distance. So that same player that you've been stood next to in the wall, you now need to stand 2 meters away from. So that impacts on our change room areas, which areas we can use, both home and away. We've worked really closely with Colchester, who have been fantastic in sharing their plans. We understand what to expect at their end. But, we have to use other areas within the stadium to make sure that the match officials can change at safe distance, the home and away team can use the showers post-match, all those kind of logistical nightmares, but also the media. How do we give them plenty of space so they can socially distance in the stand but still report on the game?
And we've sold around 300 cutouts as of 24 hours ago. I mean, I'm sure that number's increased now, but I mean, it's been great that we've been able to use a company that will do the entire process, isn't it? Because you don't have that staffing there to, to be able to create these orders and put them up.
I think that's been one of the strange things, be it the cutouts or be it the season ticket refund process. We've just asked for patience, and everyone's been brilliant in understanding, but there have been very few staff actually working at the club. So therefore, people's understanding has been important. But the cutouts, finding a third party who can actually upload the photos. Remember, we discussed early on, your inbox might have been full of 300 random pictures, and you might not have been able to do tonight because you have been cutting and trimming. But the portals allow people to do that. It's very slick. And we're expecting those in over the weekend, I believe, to be installed, which would be great.
It'll be a great spectacle in front of the cameras as well, won't it? Let's just hope that not many get decapitated by a wayward shot.
Absolutely. And returning balls is one of those random things that you mentioned. How do we return a ball? We got to sanitize the ball. There's different zones. So, let's hope that not too many. I believe last week we mentioned Pierce Sweeney and picked on him for his wayward passing. So hopefully Pierce has got his boots on the right feet.
Excellent. Thank you, Justin. I think now we'll just open up some question and answer session, if that's all right with everyone. Got a selection that have been sent in already here. So I'll just, I think this first one's probably more for Julian. But it says, it's been mooted that League Two and the National League combined to form two regionalised divisions, North and South. As a club, what would you think of this idea? And is it something that would be considered?
It's been talked about a million times. And of course, we're one of the ones that are on the, for want of a better way of putting it, on the sharp end of the travel. So, never say never in any of these situations. But I think, the football pyramid is so well established that even though there's been quite an upheaval, I can't see that happening. Certainly anywhere in the recent future, if I can use those terms. From our point of view and from the fans' point of view, it would be, but we're mostly south. I mean, I know we've got, Grecians all over the world, but we're mostly south, and some of them do a phenomenal amount of travelling. So, I mean, I'd have to look very closely. It's actually been put forward on a couple of times. It's got absolutely nowhere at all, because of course, the Football League, like the club is a group of people that vote for it. They're the one. They are, in fact, you are part owner of that, and there doesn't seem to be any appetite at all for it. And why would there be if you lived in a certain part of the country and you had probably 3 games that were away from home that you had to stay away, you had to stay an overnight, whereas we've probably got 3 where you don't have to stay away. So, I can't see it happening, but it's been on people's minds, and that's of course something I can't imagine what, but we never thought we'd be in this position. So unless something, unless some major upheaval pushes us in that direction, I don't think I can see it happening.
Thank you. Nick, one for you here. Moving forward during the pandemic, how can we as trust members assist the club through these uncertain times?
Well, I think we're already doing it. As the numbers suggested, I think over the next 12 months that there's going to be more and more initiatives to try and raise funds. We're always very conscious. We don't spend a huge amount of time thinking about how to raise money, but we do spend quite a bit of time worrying about donor fatigue, because you can't keep asking people for money. But we will be anything that we can find that we think helps a little bit. We'll certainly do. Once we get back to playing in front of crowds, the volunteer issue will be interesting, and I'm sure Justin will be having a few sleepless nights over that, because obviously things, I imagine, from the start will need to be managed differently. So lots of different ways to raise money, hopefully, but also please be patient with the club and with the trust, because we're all in sort of foreign territory, really. We don't quite know what to expect or what's going to happen next. So we're going to be feeling our way a little bit. So just be a little bit patient with us. This last week we've been talking about how do we run elections and how do we run our AGM, and that's not club related really, but they're problems that we're trying to get our heads around. So just please be patient with us while we work through all of these things. Thank you, Nick.
Justin, will new kits be brought out for the new season, whenever that may be, and can you tell us a little bit about the changes?
Yeah, so hopefully everyone's seen in the press, got a fantastic new sponsor of Carpet which is great to have on board. Relief, particularly because that was announced at the beginning of this lockdown period, which so there will be a new home kit for next season. The away and third kits will be updated for their brand logos, but delighted to have Carpet on board, which I believe that all their stores are open back now, so please flood into their stores at 2 meter distances. So hopefully Wilf appreciates that one.
Open to all this one, I mean, was there any discussion on the venue of the player final being at Wembley, or was that never up for debate?
You're asking me for that one.
Anyone who can comment on that one.
The Wembley one did come up, and of course at the very early stages everything was about cost. It would cost more to use Wembley rather than to hire another club, but it was thought that the difference between the two numbers was marginal. And it was also important when you're speaking to the managers that the players wish that, they may not be in front of a crowd, but at least they do get to play at Wembley. They may not get another chance. So the EFL were very much behind it. The clubs wanted that to happen. And even though it's probably, quite a large amount of money, it's not a large amount in the grand scheme of things. So there was an awful lot of thought about it. It was put to the test completely, but the overriding consensus was that we should play there, and that's how it turned out.
One for you, Justin. I'm thinking, have there been any discussions about the types of measures that may be needed at St James Park to allow fans or limited numbers back into the ground, or are we still too early for that kind of talk?
Still quite early for that. Obviously digesting a number of things that are going on in the retail space with today's opening of a number of venues, zoos and things such as that, and how they're adapting. But I guess, it doesn't feel fortunate being behind them, but at least we can follow a little bit in that space. We've seen some work by other clubs where limited capacities are put in place with social distancing, and it's quite dramatic. I think Twickenham have been in the newspapers with their dramatically reduced crowds potential, and it's frightening. So hopefully, those distances from a financial point of view are able to be locked down safely or reduced safely, because we need the crowds back at St James's Park, because that's our business.
There's just one, Leighton Orient did some work very early on, and they found it very difficult. They did the maths for it, and they ended up with less seats than they had season ticket holders. So that would give you, who's going to, Justin, you're going to be judge and jury on that one. So,
I think the other thing worth dropping in is, there is a fantastic product under iFollow that the EFL are using as at least some way of generating revenue for clubs if we have to resume games behind closed doors. We're fortunate enough that we get access to it each and every home game because of being club users. But when you see that product, you actually realise that it's a fantastic way to watch it. It's not the same, but it's pretty good. So that is something that the EFL will look to introduce to at least get some revenue into clubs and get some games played.
And on that, a decent proportion of that money goes directly to the club as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, in the region of 70% as a starting point, and that starts to climb the more it gets used. So the production costs don't change. So as the revenue climbs, I'm sure that percentage starts to climb as well.
What are the panel's thoughts and feelings in relation to the EFL suggestion or proposal of a salary cap for teams in League One and League Two? That's open to anyone who'd like to comment.
I think I'm generally against salary caps. I think organisations should be able to pay their best employees what they can afford to pay in order to keep them and in order to encourage people to join them. But constantly reminded that it seems slightly different in football, and I think and particularly when you're Exeter City, having to play against the likes of MK Dons or Plymouth Argyle, perhaps you have much far bigger resources. I think what's important to state is that the salary cap, my understanding is that it's not a cap on what you can pay a player, but a cap on your total wage bill. So I guess you could have a very small squad of really, really good players, or a really big squad with arguably less good players. That's not a very nice way of saying it, is it? But apologies for that. But generally, I'm against salary caps of any kind because it prohibits people from developing, I think. But there has to be something to be done, not to make competition equal in League Two, but to guarantee its survival. So if you've got loads of money, spend it on what you want to spend it on. But this idea that you can go into huge amounts of debt and get away with it because you're spending too much money on salaries, clearly that has to be resolved, because you cross the line between being fair and unfair then.
You'd hope the example of Bury would be a sort of wake-up call for teams in a similar situation as well, wouldn't you?
You would hope that, but then there are other clubs this season that have been in the same boat. So
I think there's a couple of aspects to it. Of course, it's the Bury situation that's changed it. The Football League has always had this mantra or ethos, really, is to keep everybody in the family, which of course is great, and I think everybody's believed in it, and I think it's been important. But when it comes to the likes and Bury, and they're not the only one at the moment, there's others. When that happens, and then somebody doesn't get promoted or get into the players, but equally somebody's getting relegated as well, then something has to be done about that. And I actually agree with Nick. I don't think it's the right way to do that. But what we have, I think we have the necessary rules and regulations. It's just they haven't been enforced. And there has been a number of, when this has come up, and there's another meeting I know at the end of this week, I think. And my view is that we have those regulations, but all we haven't got is somebody to establish the position quickly enough and then actually follow them through rigorously. And if, for instance, as has been suggested, that every time Bury did renege, or somebody else for that matter, they were deducted 3 points and then 6 points. One, it would focus their minds instantly. It would focus the minds of the fans who wouldn't like it at all, I could imagine. But then also equally, then there would be fairness across the board. If it was 3 points, then if somebody makes a mistake or there's a problem, 3 points, okay. But when it starts to go to 6 or 12, then it's actually preventing somebody like Bury getting promotion, and it's more than likely stopping somebody getting relegated as well. So I think the rules were there, and I think Nick's right. As soon as you as soon as you try and impose a set of rules on a salary cap, I think everybody will want it, and then they'll sit down and think, right, how do we get around this? So, that's why I can't actually understand. I can't see how they can make that work. So I think there's a number of facets, and I think it was Matt that pointed out to me the other day that he said, under Tiz, sometime back when we were bottom of the league, he said we had 12. This was him pointing out to me. We had 12 injuries, but because we had the size of squad, he said I knew it wasn't going to be there at that time. I knew it was going to be different, and of course it was. We got right to the other end. But had there been a cap on the number of players, which has been suggested, they should be allowed to do it, because it would change for us. One year we might have 4 or 5 youngsters coming through, and another we might not. So, to be pedantic about what should and shouldn't happen, I think is a different. But there's an awful lot of powerful opinion of people that have been in the game for a long time that want the help because of agents and because of escalating wage values. It's going to be a proper old bun fight. Nobody's really wrong, I wouldn't say. They've all got a good point, but it depends. And every club, for instance, Plymouth are hugely against it. And why wouldn't they? With 18,000 fans, the last thing they want some kind of cap that makes it even. And I would imagine MK and the others will be the same. So the reality is, when that comes to some kind of voting situation, I'm sure we'll be in the middle of the discussions. They'll get to the Football League. It's going to be really interesting.
If this was a government briefing, I'll probably be banned from the panel for future ones, because I'll speak out against the other two and say, let's get the cap in and let's get some money down. So, I look at it slightly different at how do others control their own business, and it's leading off of Nick's point, really, that unfortunately the others can't be trusted to run their football clubs in a fair manner that allows us to stand a chance in the division at times. And, without naming too many current names, Bury did actually impede on us last season and Colchester to a certain element as to how we progress. So I feel that unfortunately others can't be trusted to run their clubs quite as safely and prudently as perhaps we do.
Absolutely. Another question: have we been
in the morning? Don't worry.
Have we been able to get, and speaking about money, have we been able to get anything extra from Sky, or is it as was?
Sorry, say that again. I was still laughing at Justin.
Speaking of money, Justin, someone asked, have we been able to get anything extra from Sky, or is it, the usual?
We're in a number of discussions with the EFL about how we recover some of the costs that we've incurred. They have increased, I think, marginally, it's fair to say, but it's pretty small at the moment. So Julian's doing the fight, and he's probably better having that fight than I am.
They've picked up the EFL. They've picked up all the costs of the testing, which was going to be restrictive. So that's one step. We get a contingency fee, which sometimes gets mixed up with the Sky fee for each of the games, which is 20,000 a game. Which for a semi-final and live on TV is not huge. They've increased that by a very minimal amount, but the fight, as Justin says, is that they are going back to revisit where that is, because that's plainly not enough, and we've got good support from the other 3 teams that we're working with at the moment to try and improve that. So there's quite a considerable amount of pressure being brought to bear from various different corners to change that, whether or not we do, but it's certainly getting a lot of airtime right now.
Another question for you as well here, Julian. I think quite a lot of people have concerns about this, but can you give us some assurance about the future of the academy in these times?
Yeah, the academy's massively important. I think what we're beginning to see, of course, we had the Brexit situation whereby foreign players weren't going to be coming, and lots of what I read and work with some of the people who are doing the data on that says that the club that has the best under-23 system will be the ones that prosper, because, as you've already heard Matt say, the budget is going to be curtailed. So anybody from the age of sort of 16, 17, 18 upwards, the sooner they're ready, and that's what it's all about, it's getting them from the youngest age and getting them pitch ready. We've got 2 or 3 at the moment. Archie's doing particularly well, the Jack and Ben, and we've got some good ones coming behind. They're not quite ready yet, but they may get thrust in very early. So the academy becomes, in that respect, even more important than it was before. People will know one of the other things from an external point of view, going right back to the very beginning of the conversation, is I sit on the Football League's youth committee, and I couldn't be making any more noise about the unfairness of the situation of the situation when it comes to transferring players at 16. After that, it's every man for himself. That's free free business, and I've got no problem with that. But at 16, these fixed fees are not what I would think is fair. And I think we've had a good hearing. We've got a number of people that now believe that is the case. Changing something in this time to actually make the actual physical change of that isn't going to happen overnight. And I think unfortunately, with this situation, we were making quite good progress. It was actually gaining a little bit of ground, and then suddenly, of course, with COVID, it sort of stopped. But there was another meeting that I was involved in last week, which underlined yet again for all the people that were in that meeting that they too are not happy. The Premier League, of course, recognise that, but they want something else for it, which is always a sort of a negotiating position. Okay, well, we may well realise, but we want something else back. So we don't really want to give much more back, although I would say we shouldn't be too tough on the Premier League, because there's a huge amount of grant money that comes in for our academy, and we're grateful for that. We wouldn't be able to do what we did without that. The academy is going to become ever more important across the board. They're already talking about, with loans and things now, one of the things that was discussed, somebody that's a Cat 4 club is not entitled to do that, because the Brentfords of this world, the Wickhams, and any number of others, if we all started to play the same game, there'd be no academies to take these players from. So people are beginning to wake up and understand that the academies are massively important, and the strength of them, and particularly the FA are involved, because of course in the end their primary situation that they're worried about is the England team. Well, you look at the England team, most of those have been through lower league clubs, and actually they are a product of this academy that's going on at the moment over sort of 15 or 20 years. It doesn't happen over 2 minutes. It happens over a long period of time, and that's why the team is strong at the moment. And if there are too many changes, then that's going to be affected. So, I think everybody is massively pro our academy. There's of course challenges everywhere right now, because we've all got budget challenges that we've got to meet, but we've got to try and find the right balance. But I don't think it's in any danger in that sense, and I think the focus will continue to swing to that for everybody. And it's, as everybody knows, it's probably really the reason why I'm involved.
Is that where the frustrations lie with the whole Ethan Ampadu situation? I mean, the club spends upwards of 10 years developing him to the player he is today, and you feel like you're shortchanged drastically by that, aren't you?
It's patently not fair. It was done because the Football League team sold out at the time. They sold out for a large amount of money and thought it was better like that, because some don't do it like we do it. It's plainly unfair. It's recognised that it's unfair, and it needs to change. And I certainly am not resting until it is. And I think we've gained some momentum. And I've actually been working quite hard with a number of people in the press that are also interested in it. But as I say, we were just getting up ahead of steam when this happened. So we'll be back, as Arnie said.
Probably one for you, Justin and Nick here. We obviously have the most amazing fan base, as you testified to just now, Nick. Could you tell us, where that money that's donated is going to be used? What kind of things it's going to help with?
I can't be specific about it. I think the reality of the situation is that it will be used wherever the priorities dictate. So even the money that's been donated to the trust, we've said to the club, look, just keep that, because clearly times are tough, and we want to, being a good community club means a lot of different things. It means making sure that people are looked after, and those people are also people who supply us and people who do work for us. So. We've not normally, that when the trust donate money, it is to a specific cause. And last year we raised £12,000 for the academy. and there's been in the past there's been floodlights and pitches and things like that. But on this occasion, because the situation, I don't know what I would say. You would raise the money for it. You're raising it for Exeter City, and you're raising it to make sure that we've got the best possible chance of coming through this crisis in good shape. So nothing in particular. There's often a lot of talk about black holes at Exeter City. I know that's been something that's been said in the past. And I've had the privilege of being on the board for, I think, 3 years now. And if there's a black hole, I can't find it. You know, it's every penny is used really sensibly and really thoughtfully. So I had no hesitation in just saying the club will use that money sensibly and prioritise the way that they use it.
And leading off of Nick there, you know, it's about making sure that we start next season in the best possible position. You know, if we can make sure that we're as strong financially as possible to give us as good a chance, then that means that we can believe in our budgets and our processing, because there's a lot of uncertainty over the next 6 months, you know, that we need to protect ourselves from. So we're very grateful. We really appreciate it, but it will take a whole lot longer before we can actually start committing to any kind of additional expenditure over and above what we already incur, because, you know, these are just uncertain times for everyone.
Absolutely. I'm conscious that we've sort of already run over time, so we'll just have a couple more questions before we finish off. I think, Nick, there's one more poll to run just on this. But I mean, I'm not sure how you can answer this question, but how did Exeter City vote on the proposals made in relation to the season's end, i.e. specific revised proposals put forward by other clubs?
Yeah, that's not too difficult to answer, actually, because and I, you know, I'm the first one to have a pop at the FL, and there's an awful lot of people do, but in the circumstances with a situation where you have 3 different leagues, you have within those leagues, you have people that are top of the league, bottom of the league, in the middle of the league, some that want it to finish, some that want to carry on, some that are absolutely skint, some that have loads of money. That's a completely unbelievable set of circumstances they've had to negotiate. So when it got to the point whereby they made their recommendation as to what should happen, and I saw the note on their, Tranmere 3-page piece of motion, and then another one on top of that, you know, on the Saturday and Sunday before, you know, I'm reading it, you know, again and again to try and understand the complexities of it, which eventually you do, because you keep on going until you get it. But the reality is, and we could have very easily argued at one point that if we'd have made a very slight alteration to the way that the average points were done, you could very easily argue that we would have been in 4th place, and that we should finish the season and we would have gone up. But sometimes you have to take the bigger view for football as a whole. And it was very obvious to me that it's like an arbitration, which I've said lots of times before. And a judge told us at the beginning of an arbitration, he said, 2 of you are going to come out of here, both of you are going to be unhappy. One is going to be more unhappy than the other. And that's what this situation was. Nobody was going to come out with it with what they wanted. Nobody. It wasn't possible. But what you had to do is come out with something that was feasible, possible, and allowed football to carry on. And that's what, in the end, we decided to vote for. Not necessarily to, like some others did, I won't mention names, that really just looked at, this is us, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to get in lawyers and barristers and God knows, we're going to bombard the Football League with that to try and make sure that we get what we want. Well, we could have done something similar at the other end of the scale, but we decided that wasn't the right way to go. And therefore we voted for what the Football League did. And that's where League One was still in a quandary, but eventually that's what they came to. Because in the end, no matter what, you have to move on. And I think that in discussions that I had with the 12 at our end, League Two was pretty much came to that conclusion pretty quickly. But I think the Football League did a good job. So yes, in answer to the question, it was I think it was actually quite straightforward to decide what the right thing to do was, and I'd like to think that as a club we did that.
Absolutely. One final question. I mean, probably a good one to end on. Have there been any decisions about plans for next season within the EFL yet, or again, is it too early to consider?
Yeah, you know, this is what where the external bit is very useful, because yes, I do get to hear what's going on, and I would have said, I don't mind admitting that I was wrong. I would have never have thought that we were doing what we're doing. When this happened, I thought, the season's over, there's no chance, but here we are looking at playoffs. And again, I would have thought that we were, from the way that the pandemic took a hold, I thought it was going to take a lot longer. And there's talk now of, and again, there was talk of January, so now there's talk of September, but things are moving back towards us. Look what happened today. Things are moving back towards us quite fast. They may be even faster, but I think realistically, you don't want me to guess. I'm just telling you that I got 2 wrong. But if I had to guess, I think we're looking at an August pre-season and a start very end of August, beginning of September. But as I say, things are moving so quickly that maybe that even comes a bit further forward. When we start to get people in the ground, that's another ball game altogether. Justin's perhaps better placed to because he's working with those people all the time who are looking at that. But certainly from a point of view of returning to football, where I'm sat, that's looking would be what I would anticipate at this point.
I can't add anything to what Julian said. Let's all hope it's soon. Let's all hope St James's Park is bouncing again, and we get those tills ringing, the turnstiles clicking, and plenty of pints being poured, and we can all be back in St James's Park together.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of wraps up for the evening. Thank you to all of you for giving up your time this evening, and thanks for everyone for attending. I don't know if you have any parting words, Nick, at all.
No, I mean it starts to get boring, but thank you so much to everybody who's helped. It's quite humbling in a way that people want to help Exeter City. You can't. It's just marvelous. So thank you, everybody.
And I hope we all enjoy the 2 games on Sky. Well, I say 2, hopefully 3 games on Sky, and show our support from home in the right way.
Well done, Scotty.
Well done.
Yeah, well done. Thank you, Scott.